Welcome back. We are going to pick up where we left off with the three-quarter view portrait and start working on our shading. I'm just going to kind of erase out some of the darker marks here so that I can get cleaner lines when I'm shading. You can erase as much or as little as you want. I guess it depends on how much you want to see lines or not. So it's helpful having these kneaded erasers because all you have to do is just kind of dab over your stuff and it'll just lighten it up for you. Now when we start shading, if you're kind of new to shading or new to drawing in general, there's a lot of techniques for doing it, and one thing that I tend to kind of emphasize is to learn how to control your pencil first. So much about shading is really just about control. So can you control the pressure of your pencil to create a variety of values? Um, so you don't need anything fancy. I can do this with a mechanical pencil if I wanted to. I just happen to have these pencils at home. But you don't need anything fancy, you just need to be able to control your tools. So for example, um, when you're shading, um, you want to be able to start with a light touch and be able to kind of lift off your values as you go along. You can always go darker. You don't want to, go straight black right away with your values because that might cause some problems. You may need to erase things, and that is very challenging to erase. So I'm barely touching the paper here, and I'm just very lightly kind of running the pencil across the page. And if I wanted to, I could start increasing the pressure to create values if I need them to get darker. I can lighten up from here too. And I'm almost using like the side of the wood to kind of mush the graphite along if I need it. So you don't even need a blending stump to shade. You can just do it with your pencil. So what I'm thinking is I'm not going to use a blending stump in this video, just to show you what you can do with just a pencil. I'm not going to use my fingers, just the pencil. And as I have already been kind of singing the praises of the kneaded eraser, you can use the kneaded eraser to lift out any highlights that you want in your drawing as well for like large areas, small areas. It's kind of versatile because you can shape it however you want. Now, when you start learning about portraiture, I think it's really important to work on learning how to see values because I think a lot of people don't really know where to shade on a face. But if you really look closely, very little of your face is pure white like the page. Most of it has some sort of value to it. So, I mean, you may have like a few highlights where the light's shining on things that are going to make it look brighter. But in the end, everything's going to be mostly shades of gray, whether very light or darker or verging on black. If you have a hard time kind of figuring that out, just looking at yourself in real life or at like a color photo or something, a little tip could be to take a photo and then just turn it black and white. And then you can see what is actually just white and what is a variety of grays. So kind of trying to change the way you see so that you can see in black and white. All right, we're going to speed things up here as I've got about 2.5 hours of video of me shading to get through. So basically when we work on shading, you just kind of want to slowly build up your values, and it's a lot easier to get darker than it is to get lighter. Just like cutting hair, you can always go shorter, can't always go longer. When I'm drawing the face, really the only things that have crisp lines on them would be the glasses in a few of the areas, like around the lenses. So this is about the only point where I've sharpened my pencil, is when I was working on the glasses so that I could get those hard edges. Otherwise, everything else on here is very organic, so softer tends to work better, at least in my case. It's kind of funny. It's the dead of winter. It's about 15 below zero right now, and I haven't seen the sun in ages, yet I'm so grumpy that the sun came out today because it's ruining my shot right now. I ended up having to put a large canvas in front of my windows to block out the sunlight so that I could finish this video. Man, rough life. So as I'm working on building up my values on the face, I'm paying close attention to the subtle variations of value, kind of creating gradations going from light to dark, because everything isn't really like a solid block of color. It's going to be subtle and varying as it works. Another thing that's important to keep in mind when you're shading on the face is to think about three-dimensionally, like the contours of what you're shading are. So I'm kind of bending the lens of my glasses to show that sort of refraction. As I start working more on the skin, I'm curving my marks. So especially around this cheekbone area, I'm curving and following the shape of my face. And that's going to help create a more round surface. So it's going to give it some more volume, some more depth, rather than going straight up and down or side to side. So those lines that we use that follow the curves of a form are called cross contour lines. So we're going across the volume that we're seeing, and that's going to help everything look more three-dimensional as we work. As I start working on the hair, I'm starting to just block in the darker areas that I see. So instead of thinking about individual strands of hair, I'm really thinking about shapes of value. So sort of larger chunks of value that stand out more. So I think it's easier to work that way so that you don't get overwhelmed with tiny details. And then you can erase out highlights. You can add in shadows and get more detailed as you go along. But starting this way I think is pretty beneficial. And I think it depends on the level of realism that you want to have. I mean, it can be sort of sketchy if you want it to be. It doesn't have to be hyper realistic. But you can see I'm using my pencil and then going back and forth between that and my kneaded eraser and lifting out highlights as I work. And I think we'll call it quits for today. So there's a portrait from a 3/4 view.
Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more videos.